visitors are even being told by their home countries to take their vacations and money elsewhere.
The Trump administration's policies have been bad for business.
Drop in the number of international tourists who are visiting the United States this year.
Total arrivals to the U.S. are expected to fall about 9%.
The U.S. tourism industry had been banking on a good year after the number of international visitors to the U.S. had jumped in 2024.
Visitors to the U.S. down at least 14% from a year ago.
America's tourist problem isn't coming, it's here, and the world is responding with its wallets. For decades, the United States didn't just attract visitors, it attracted dreams. That magnetic pull, the one that filled planes from Tokyo to London, from Sydney to Sao Paulo, is failing. Not slowly, not quietly, but in real time, with consequences nobody in Washington seems to grasp yet. Here's what makes this crisis unprecedented. The United States is now the only major economy among 184 countries forecast to experience declining international visitor spending in 2025. Let that sink in. Every other major destination is growing. America is shrinking. The numbers paint a catastrophic picture. After recovering to 72.4 million international visitors in 2024, almost back to pre-pandemic levels, everything reversed. March 2025 saw arrivals plummet 14% year over year. Western Europe, our biggest spender market, dropped 17.2%. Germany alone fell 28%. The projection? A $12.5 billion loss in visitor spending this year. That's not a recession, that's a collapse. But it gets worse. For the first time in years, the US is facing a massive $50 billion travel trade deficit. That means not only is the world not coming here, but Americans are taking their money and spending it overseas at a record pace.
But statistics only tell half the story. The human cost reveals the real crisis. Take Jessica Broscha, a 29-year-old German tattoo artist with valid tourist authorization and a return ticket. Border agents detained her for 45 days. Not hours, not overnight, 45 days. 8 of those in solitary confinement at Otay Mesa Detention Center. Her crime? Traveling to America while having tattoos and an alternative appearance. Lucas Seeloff's story is equally disturbing. This 25-year-old German tourist was grabbed at the border after visiting Mexico, still 22 days inside his legal 90-day permit. A language barrier led to confusion during questioning. The result? 16 days in detention. His family scrambled to pay $2,744 for his deportation flight. The message to his friends back home? Skip America. Then there's Fabian Schmidt. Here's where it gets truly insane. Schmidt isn't even a tourist. He's a permanent resident with a valid green card, detained at Boston Logan, held at Wyatt Detention Center in Rhode Island, a legal resident treated like a criminal at the airport he's used for years. The casualties mount daily. Rebecca Burke, a 28-year-old Welsh backpacker, 19 days detained in Washington state. Jasmine Mooney, a Canadian actress renewing her work visa, 12 days locked up. 2 German teenagers landing in Hawaii for vacation, deported immediately because they hadn't booked every single night's accommodation in advance. Immigration attorney Stephen Yale Laird dropped a bombshell that explains everything. CBP has been much more vigilant, reviewing everyone's credentials since Trump took office. Translation? This isn't random, it's systematic. Pedro Rios, who's worked the border for 22 years, told the Associated Press something that should terrify every American business dependent on tourism. I've never seen travelers from Western Europe and Canada, longtime US allies, locked up like this.
Prison, what happened once you were there?
Prior to the prison, I had a cavity search conducted on my body, and then I was put in handcuffs. I asked them if I was under arrest. They said no, and then I was taken to the facility where I was to undergo another cavity search and a strip search. I was placed in prison wear, what they put the prisoners in. I was fingerprinted, all the normal inmate processing, and then I ended up in a cell overnight until I was released the next morning.
The airline industry isn't waiting for diplomatic solutions. They're fleeing. Play Airlines announced the nuclear option, complete U.S. market exit by October 2025. Every route canceled. Stewart, Boston Logan, Baltimore Washington International, all abandoned. Their CEO's explanation was brutally honest. The North American market was less successful. Translation? Their customers don't want to risk American detention. Condor Airlines eliminated 6 North American routes overnight. Baltimore, Minneapolis, Phoenix, San Antonio, gone. The German federal court ruling that killed their feeder traffic was just the excuse. The real reason?
German tourists aren't booking America anymore. WestJet's numbers are apocalyptic. 9 U.S. routes suspended, bookings down 70% through September 2025. Their executives explicitly blamed U.S. President Donald Trump's trade tariffs and the resulting collapse in Canadian travel demand. When airlines start naming presidents in their route cancellation announcements, you know it's personal. Air Canada followed suit. 5 cross-border routes axed for winter 2025-26. Toronto-Detroit, dead. Montreal-Indianapolis, gone. These aren't far-flung destinations. These are neighbor cities, connected for generations, now severed. The European exodus accelerates weekly. KLM cutting routes. British Airways reducing capacity. Air France pulling back. Lufthansa restructuring away from America. Norse Atlantic tells the most damning story. They've eliminated half of the 24 U.S. routes they launched since 2022. 50% failure rate in 3 years. Secondary American cities are becoming aviation ghost towns. Baltimore-Washington International has lost 7 airlines in recent years. Minneapolis-St. Paul watched European carriers vanish one by one. These airports built international terminals for growth that's now reversing at breakneck speed. The economic devastation spreads like cancer through American tourism hubs. International visitors spend 8 times more than domestic travelers, averaging $4,000 per trip. They stay in luxury hotels, eat at expensive restaurants, buy premium experiences. When they vanish, entire economic ecosystems collapse. Hotel profitability has already crashed from 43% to 32% of properties. That's thousands of hotels sliding toward bankruptcy. New York, despite being America's gateway, reports international visitor drops approaching 20%. Los Angeles watches Asian tourism evaporate. Miami's South American connections wither. San Francisco's tech conference circuit shrinks as international attendees choose virtual participation over detention risk. Smaller cities face extinction-level events. Flagstaff, Arizona, once thriving on international tourist dollars, has completely abandoned international marketing. They've accepted their new reality. Americans only. Sedona, Jackson Hole, Aspen all report similar pivots. The message? International money is gone. Adapt or die. The U.S. Travel Association tries damage control, admitting they're working with Customs and Border Protection on, quote, perception issues about entering the U.S. But this isn't perception, it's reality, documented in government warnings, airline schedules, and detention statistics. This isn't just about perception, it's a measurable collapse in reputation. A 2025 global index measuring national influence delivered a shocking verdict. While the U.S. still ranks high in economic power, for the attribute of being, quote, friendly, it now ranks a dismal 124th in the world. Brand USA, the official tourism marketing organization, scrambles with emergency campaigns. But how do you market a destination when allied governments officially warn against visiting? When viral detention stories appear weekly? When airlines literally flee your airports? The National Travel and Tourism Office lives in fantasyland. They're still projecting 77.1 million visitors for 2025 and 85 million for 2026. Current trends suggest they'll miss by tens of millions. These aren't forecasts anymore. They're delusions. Tourism economics and Oxford economics, the serious number crunchers, paint the real picture. Overall 8.7% decline in U.S. arrivals for 2025. Canadian visitation dropping 20%. Western European visits falling 6%. These projections assume things don't get worse. But every week brings new detention stories, new warnings, new route cancellations. The timing couldn't be worse. America hosts the World Cup in 2026, the 250th anniversary celebrations throughout 2026. Events requiring millions of international visitors. But infrastructure is collapsing now. Airlines are leaving now. Reputation is dying now. Industry insiders whisper about the Trump effect, but fear speaking publicly. One hotel executive, requesting anonymity, said, "We're watching 40 years of relationship building evaporate in real time. My Japanese partners won't even visit for meetings anymore. They Zoom from Tokyo." A tour operator specializing in European groups shared devastating numbers. 2019, I moved 10,000 Germans through national parks. 2025, maybe 1,000. They're going to Canada instead. Same mountains, no detention centers. The cascading effects hit everywhere. Rental car companies report international reservation collapses. Attraction operators watch foreign language tour groups vanish. Restaurant owners in tourist districts pivot desperately toward domestic diners. The ecosystem built on international dollars crumbles in real time. Convention centers report the stealth crisis. International conference attendance hasn't just dropped, it's reorganizing away from America entirely. Major tech conferences add Toronto satellites. Medical conventions expand European venues. The subtle message? Important international gatherings need non-American options. Universities sound different alarms. International student applications crater as families fear their children being detained at borders. One admissions director confided, "Parents ask if we can guarantee their kids won't be arrested at the airport. What am I supposed to say?" The State Department maintains radio silence. No acknowledgement of the crisis, no policy adjustments, no recognition that America's soft power evaporates with every detention. Their approach? Pretend nothing's happening, while the world watches American tourism leadership collapse. Here's what Washington refuses to grasp. Every detained tourist becomes an anti-ambassador. They return home with horror stories. They post on social media, they warn friends, family, colleagues. One detention creates hundreds of canceled trips. The multiplication effect is devastating and accelerating. The solution isn't complex, but it requires something Washington seems incapable of: admitting error. Real reform means retraining 50,000 border agents. And it's desperately needed. A U.S. Government Accountability Office report found that CBP's own records were so unreliable, they couldn't even confirm if their officers had completed the required training. It's not just about bad policy, it's about a documented failure of basic competence. It means creating civilian oversight of customs procedures, establishing accountability when visitors are mistreated. Most critically, recognizing that every airport interaction shapes America's global reputation. The irony strangles. America spends billions promoting tourism, crafting campaigns about diversity and welcome, then undoes everything in arrival halls nationwide. One detention erases 1,000 beautiful advertisements. Some argue this is overblown. Millions still visit annually. True. But direction matters more than volume. When your closest allies actively discourage travel, when your neighbors choose anywhere else, when airlines abandon your airports, that's not a crisis. That's a collapse in motion. The world hasn't given up on America. Not yet. But patience expires. Trust, once shattered, requires years to rebuild. And every detention, every deportation, every family separated at the border broadcasts the same message globally: America doesn't want you here. The question isn't whether recovery is possible, it's whether America wants to recover. Because fixing this requires acknowledging uncomfortable truths: that current policies destroy tourism, that allied relationships are fracturing, that economic damage compounds daily. Time isn't neutral in this crisis. Every week without reform deepens the hole. Every month of denial makes recovery harder. Every year of collapsed tourism creates permanent economic scars. The world is learning to vacation without America. Once that habit forms, reversing it becomes exponentially harder. What's your take? Can America reverse this unprecedented decline, or are we witnessing the permanent end of American tourism dominance? Have you experienced or heard about these detention issues? Drop your thoughts below. Because understanding why the world travels, or doesn't, shapes more than vacation plans. It shapes how nations relate, how economies survive, how cultures connect. Right now, those connections are severing, and time to repair them is running out.